The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here he is, Brandon.
Welcome back to the Brandon Peters Show. Today we begin Tarkovsky's Tales, a director retrospective on the film catalog of Andrei Tarkovsky. And joining me for this retrospective, author of Red, White, and Who, owner of Gallifrey Base, and director of programming for Chicago TARDIS, and DJ extraordinaire, Stephen Warren Hill.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Very excited to have you on board for this. We'll get to the retrospective shortly. But first, for those who haven't listened to the Doctoberfest episodes I posted back in the fall, let's get a little bit to know you and why I would, get googly-eyed and want you here on this show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and why I have you here.
Okay. I'm a Chicagoan. Hey, that's important. My two biggest passions are movies and Doctor Who, and I just sort of immerse myself in both. There's plenty of movies I don't have any interest in. I will admit that, but I guess any movie buff would say the same thing. That's I've written a couple of books on classic horror movies. So I'm wearing my Frankenstein meets the Wolfman t-shirt.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of the movies that I wrote about. Excuse me. And Doctor Who, I've written Red, White, and Who, as you mentioned, and I run Gallifrey Base. Well, that is my staff runs Gallifrey Base. I own Gallifrey Base. I still do plenty of admin work for it, but all praise to my staff who keep things going.
A good staff, by the way. Of all the old forums, message board things, that's one of the most well-regulated, keep it on topic, good things.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Granted, I'm not all over. There's I stick to one corner of it, mainly the physical media, missing episodes areas, and some somewhat figurines, but I don't tend to go into the new stuff too much because it can get too abrasive over there. So, and Greg, you do split it. It is split there into positive talk and negative talk.
It is.
So you don't have to go. Yeah. So that's thoughtful. Very, very, very cool. And then Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, by the way, that's on my top list of like alternate or original cuts of films I'd love to see, because of the Lugosi with dialogue,
right? Yeah,
that I'd always wonder and see how that was, but probably never know that one. That's probably damaged, destroyed, gone. Yeah, so very, very cool. Yeah, and you post a lot on. I know we're friends on Facebook, and you post what you've watched. Like a log. Are you on Letterboxd at all? I haven't searched for you.
I have an account there, but I found it too difficult to sort of keep up with it. So
gotcha. I started it last year, and I've actually gone through with it, and it helps when I get to the end of the year to do my top films and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, let's just pull it up.
Yeah, I think I started listing what I've watched on Facebook just because it was easy for me to do it. I keep a database of my own movie collection, and then it was just a matter of sort of working out the right table to create and the right form to print out, and then I just cut and paste the text into a Facebook post, and
there you
go. The only thing I have to do is manually add in movies that I don't own a copy of.
Gotcha.
If I see something that, for example, I went to see Nosferatu on New Year's Eve, and of course I didn't own a copy yet. So I have to add that one manually until I Now I do have a copy because it just came out this week, and then it gets added to my database, and all the magic happens that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, I it was funny this year with Letterboxd. I'm like I'm logging these things and I'm like I don't know if anyone cares like or anything like that. And then come November through a lot of December award season, I'm privileged to be able to have access and watch screeners of things that aren't
Yep.
out yet. And then Nosferatu was when I saw it back. I think I watched it like right when I got back home from Chicago TARDIS
Oh yeah.
this past and that one and the Brutalist and stuff. And people were like, "How are you watching them? What? There's no you liar." I'm like, "No, I'm actually watching them and at home
Mhm.
via Academy screeners and
It's
stuff." Like,
legit. It's legit.
it's legit. It's legit. And it's funny because I'm like, okay, people are paying attention to what I'm watching on there.
Yeah.
Then if they are, they're seeing some bizarre stuff that I get on these. Like I went through like I was recently talking about like how I went through a Herschel Gordon Lewis box set because I never finished it before. So they just see like I'd be watching like the Gorgor Girls followed by some prestige thing followed by another Taste of Blood. Like it's just the funny weeble wobble,
Yeah.
which I wanted to point out for listeners. So I took after December I took January off pretty much. I posted some stuff that I hadn't posted before, but it was old. And then I came back and I had Jamie Alvey on, and we talked Bystanders. Well, she just had her movie come out, Bystanders, and the movie we discussed on that was The Wizard of Gore, which was because I was in the middle of a Herschel Gore. I'm like, you want to talk about this one because it's the next one up in my box set. And she thought there was some deep meaning behind me choosing that movie, but no. And then she kept calling it the Juno movie. And then last week, Greg Magoon was on, and we were talking about what to discuss. And I was like, well, it's February. I'm like thinking like horror rom-coms maybe. But he's like, well, no. He brought up Jennifer's Body, and I'm like, well, that was Diablo Cody's movie after Juno, so okay. And then we're doing Tarkovsky here. We're starting this, and then when I posted the episode, you mentioned that Diablo Cody came to Chicago TARDIS, so it links again
Yeah.
somewhat. Which did you
Yeah.
get to meet her at all, or was she just
No,
an
no.
attendee? Or
She just attended. And we only know that we found that when we were researching Red, White, and Who. We only know that because she mentioned in an interview at one time attending a Doctor Who convention in Chicago, and
oh,
there there's only one, so
gotcha, yeah.
and judging by the things that she said about it, we knew for sure that it was Chicago TARDIS, and we nailed down the year, but I forgot to do my research. I'll have to tell you exactly what year it was.
Was it pre the modern era, or was it post?
It was, let's say it was roughly 2005-ish.
Oh wow,
So
okay.
it was,
So she's an old school for
2004
sure.
maybe. Yeah, it predates the return of the show. I'm pretty sure it did, but I'll confirm it and in a later episode.
Gotcha.
I regret not forgetting to look it up
It's okay.
for tonight, but I'll fix that at a later date.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So what kind of spurns this is when we talked Doctor Who stuff back in Doctoberfest, we got to film talk, and you mentioned that your three favorite directors, I believe you said, were John Carpenter, Andrei Tarkovsky, and Stanley Kubrick. Was that it?
No,
Nope. What was it? Who am I missing here?
I'm probably not even going to remember.
Oh, okay. Well, I
That's
remember
the
two of
funny
them.
thing.
I remember two of them because I was like, "Oh, Carpenter, that's yeah, my I'm there with you too." Oh well, we'll have
Usually I just say my two favorite directors are.
okay,
So that was a spur of the moment thing,
okay.
and it clearly didn't stick with me. I'll think about it sort of in the back of my mind here, and if it
Or
pops
we
into
can
my head.
listeners can go back to the episode and find it. They can do that too. Yeah. And then when we were at Chicago TARDIS, I was like, yeah, I want to record something with something with you, but I was like, at the time, it's like you're just winding down from this massive event you planned, and it's the last thing you want to discuss. But I was like, yeah, Tarkovsky. I definitely want to. I've held off because I've had guests. I've had listeners request certain films of his, and I've had guests like when I'm talking about what film talk about bring up his, but I'm like, I kind of want to do his body of work and not just like random episodes. So here we are. We will go through all of them by the time this series is done. Um, so this retrospective, it gets told in 8 installments, with one episode is going to be dropping each month, with the exception of June, because I need June off. I got some busy stuff coming on there, but and I wanted Stephen especially to join me on this journey. So uh, yeah, you'll get one of these a month, and I'm very much looking forward to it because these are films to have conversations about for sure. This first episode, we're going to look into the student films of Andrei Tarkovsky, which are The Killers, There Will Be No Leave Today, and The Steamroller and The Violin. Before we get to those, let's talk about why we love Tarkovsky so much. So what stands out to you, Stephen? What has drawn you to him over the years?
I think the first number one thing has to be the pacing
Mhm.
of his movies, and I so the first Tarkovsky movie I ever saw was Stalker. I saw it on the big screen at
Oh wow.
Facets Cinema in Chicago. Um, and I honestly did not know what to think because it's for a first timer, it's a bit of a shock to the system. It's
Hmm.
I know I didn't fully understand that. It's so different from anything that that we see now, and especially stands out in the how slow and deliberate the pacing is. Um, I like that a lot, and I tell you, when you encourage people to watch a Tarkovsky film, that's the first thing you gotta caution them about is you really need to slow yourself down before you start watching this movie, because if you don't, you're just gonna get bored. You're
Hmm.
gonna lose patience with it, and you don't want that to happen because then you get no reward out of it.
Right.
So pacing is certainly one of the things, probably the biggest thing that attracts me to his movies. I the the next thing is probably um, that they're hard to figure out,
Hmm.
and for that reason they keep you thinking, and that was how I knew that Stalker was a good movie when I went to see it that first time, was that I could not stop thinking about it for days and days afterwards. Um, and then you wanted to see it again right away. And VHS, that was that was the only option at the time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so probably the pacing and the enigma of
Hmm.
the what's being shown on the screen, what's being shared.
Yeah, I personally I love his cinematography of his movies
Mm.
is outstanding. It's gigantic. It's balanced. Like there's purpose to what's going on everywhere in a frame. He's always got that metaphysical nature to his movies, which add to that enigma and ponderous feel. Um, and I feel like every time I return to one of his movies, I feel like I'm getting something new out of it. I feel
Mm.
like I've unlocked something else. I'm seeing something different. That happens with age. That happens with watching more movies, learning more stuff. And I love that about it. And he's also got this spooky without feeling like it's trying to be spooky type thing.
Mm.
Something I've mentioned I liked about old Doctor Who, where where like classic Doctor Who, where it's like it looks like it feels eerie, but it's not. Like what is weird about this? Um, and he's the classic idea of when I tell people and the importance of a director with film is it's not about what the story is, it's about how it's told, presented, showcased, adapted, or envisioned. Like it could be it could be someone's walk to go get to the mailbox, but how that person tells that story could be the most exciting thing in the world, could be the most thought-provoking, heartbreaking. And like he is very much like that. My first one I saw was Solaris. Probably most people's first one, but I was just like drawn to it. And he does that pacing thing is something you really got to find and appreciate with him too, because
Yeah.
Solaris and like Stalker, to get to the part that you're wanting and the journey and the goods, it takes a while. Like, and I tell people, I'm like, just get to the space station with Solaris.
Yeah.
I mean, there's good stuff before the space station, but get to the space station. Get on Stalker. It's like get to the journey. Get to the um. But that's the beauty of his movies, and they're ones that you can't just like. You have to watch, walk away, think, and you're not like gonna like sit and like go through and watch these obsessively. Like you
Yeah.
always like for
Right. Yeah.
me, I give them a break. We take some time apart from each other, and then we come back. And though I had a couple years in a row where I watched Solaris on my birthday, randomly. I don't know why. Like, you know what? This is a day to myself. I can sit uninterrupted. I can tell wife and kids, just hang on. I want to watch Solaris today, uninterrupted. But yeah, and he's a director. He's got a small film catalog. That mostly due to his early. He died quite young. It's like 52, 53, something like that. But and I think he's that sort of small catalog, along with Leone, Kubrick, and Melville, is sort of like what has influenced Tarantino and his make 10 films and get out type narrative he wants to follow. But I'm like, most of them because they died. They would have made more films, dude. And I think Scorsese and Spielberg are proof that you can still do great stuff when you get really old, but that dude wants to stay with that. And obviously Christopher Nolan's a big fan of Tarkovsky. So if you're a person listening to this and you're not familiar with like older filmmakers or Russian filmmakers, stuff like that, these are the type of people that kind of getting influenced by him, and that you see his work, what he's done represented in a more modern filmmaker. For things. So this film school ones we're going to talk about here. Tarkovsky was he was like one of only like 15 students accepted to his class at the time. Like a bunch of people apply, he gets chosen, and his class is taught by like a high-end filmmaker of the time. And the guy, this is important because he teaches the class apparently as if, I don't know. I can't teach you how to direct. It is something that just comes out of you, and always be yourself. And that's very important. There are things. There's how to teach people how to manage people, but then there's directing. Managing people is part of directing. But so he goes there, and his first assignment is a group project called The Killers, which comes out in 1956, The Killers, which Tarkovsky, yes, there you go.
Есть что-нибудь выпить?
Лимонад, морс, джинджер-эль.
Выпить, я спрашиваю.
Я же вам сказал.
Веселенький город, нечего сказать. Кстати, как он называется?
Сэммит.
Ты слыхал когда-нибудь, Макс?
Нет.
А интересно, что тут делают по вечерам?
Обедает.
Все приходят сюда и едят вот этот самый обед.
Правильно.
По-твоему, правильно?
Конечно.
А ведь ты умница.
Конечно.
Ну и врешь. Как по-твоему, Эл? Балда. Тебя как зовут?
Directs with Alexander Gordon and Marika Baiku. Written by Tarkovsky, Gordon, and based on a short story by Ernest Hemingway, starring Yuli Fate, Alexander Gordon, Valentin Vinogradov, Vadim Novikov, Andrei Tarkovsky. Andrei Tarkovsky does appear in this one, and Vasily Shushkin. It's about two men who besiege a lunch bar looking for a third man they must kill. This adaptation of Ernest Hemingway's story is a big deal because in Russia at the time, government ideologies were changing around, and outside literature and art was banned, especially from adaptation. And so this not only is the big first for a student film, for film in general in Russia, because they weren't supposed to do that. Tarkovsky in this directs the first and third scenes, and While listed as co-director and co-writer, his collaborator Alexander Gordon has conceded that these were largely Tarkovsky in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephen, your thoughts on The Killers?
Well, the first, so it's 20 minutes and 38 seconds.
Yes.
At least the print on the Criterion disc is, and so it's the shortest of the three that we're going to talk about today. And interestingly, even though it's the first, it's the most Tarkovsky-like.
Okay.
It matches of the three, it matches his later style most closely, I think. Pacing, partly, the entire, you said that he directed the first and third scenes, but most of the movie is just the first scene.
Right. Yeah.
The second and third scenes are very, very brief. And, so you get a very long scene set in one single location with a very few characters that are having a conversation. There's more going on, obviously, than that, but that is, how different is that from Sacrifice? It's
Yeah.
a long extended conversation between a couple of people in one location. Camera moves a little bit more, but it's
Right.
not really. It's you boil it down to the essentials, it's roughly the same thing. So the Killers reminded me most of Tarkovsky. For me, it had the most Tarkovsky-like atmosphere, and I think I read that all of the actors in it were students also. The co-director plays the guy who owns the restaurant. Tarkovsky plays the guy who comes in to get a sandwich. But for students, they're very good. I didn't feel like I was watching students acting. I didn't feel like I was watching 20-year-old person acting a
Right.
40-year-old part or anything like that, So, and it also, because we're going to hit on this many, many times when we talk about Tarkovsky, his description of filmmaking as being sculpting in time, calls it, he calls making a movie sculpting in time because it's the first medium that represents time as well as what you're seeing. Obviously, still photography can do that, but only if it's a time lapse, right?
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a still. And the reason I bring that up is because it's not, the first scene feels real time, but it's not.
Right.
Because you see the clock, somebody mentions the exact time early in the scene, and then you see the clock towards the end of the scene, and it's only been about 10 minutes of screen time, but almost the whole hour has passed in narrative time. You don't notice it, and it doesn't call any attention to itself. But there's time compression, so he's already sort of playing with time. It's in no way is it like what we would today call a real-time film, like Nick of Time or things like that, because that's almost like a gimmick. This is not, it's not a gimmick, and it's not real time, but it has that feel. That's the pace that it runs at. It's just, when we cut away, we are losing minutes here and there. We don't notice it because it's not important.
No. Yeah.
So I feel like he's already starting to play with time, continuity, and pacing here. And surprisingly, when we get to the other movies, they're faster paced. They don't linger as much.
Yeah.
But those
Yeah.
are my first impressions of Killers.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely. I agree with you on that one. And the third scene technically is still in the same place as the first scene. So like that's like one block of filming. So by default it's a third scene. I'm pretty impressed with like the work, especially with like mirrors here, which is a common thing with him. Like in where it just does not feel like you're watching a student film because there's a shot with like a mirror and like everything reflecting in the mirror is so thought out and placed that normally just been like, hey, make sure all the equipment's not in the back there. But like
Right.
this is stuff that's like literally placed so it fits with the framing and just is a piece of the frame and interesting to look at. So it might, I would think in a student film it would feel like an afterthought, but Tarkovsky embraces and makes sure like all those reflections and stuff work. And this has clever camera work where like it pans down to it and it has the guy tied up, the cooking stuff tied up on the ground, and just like as he's making the sandwich and stuff, and just a clear, because of how he's cutting, shooting, like this is really suspenseful, and I'm just surprised at how that plays so well with everything they do with through the dialogue, like his cuts and stuff, and the way where the camera's pointing, and it's just this, and then
You can
at the
can
end.
definitely feel the
Yeah.
tension
Yeah.
in these.
Because these two guys come in and they're just like kind of loose and free because they know they have the upper hand no matter what, and playing with the one behind the counter with the gun, and the innocent people that come in just wanting a sandwich, and him having to piss the one guy off, and everything else. It's it's quite good. Like this felt like something that wouldn't be different than like I mentioned Tarantino earlier, but Inglorious Bastards is full of like scenes and scenarios like this kind of tension, this kind of suspense based around conversation, stakes set, knowing what's going on, and then you get the old boxer guy that's who they're trying to kill, that's just laying in bed, like just embracing whatever's going to happen to him, but he's not going down to get a sandwich. It's one thing he's not going to do, and that feels like classic out of the classic throw in the fight type movies that were kind of dime a dozen a little bit back in the day with like Kubrick would make a boxing movie even around then, and but yeah, it's just fascinating because it's just feels like people who know what they're doing already and not like a first student film. But I guess film school and film is way different for someone that age back then because there's so much that has to be taught. And now we have technology that's so much easier to use and so many people doing it. And just like, I always talk about how even like in the 80s and 70s and stuff and 90s, even the bad films were made properly, but made well because people had to go learn how to use the equipment to some degree. And I think that's what's happening here a lot because they're just like they cobbled together costumes and the set and everything else, and I didn't even feel like I was watching a set too much. Just fascinating work for a first film. Like you can tell somebody's got it there, and I mean it's got 3 directors on it, but you know who the one is pretty much. So, but yeah, it's really well done. There's a racial slur, if you're going to check this out, used multiple times. I'm not condoning it or whatever, but I will say, as I argue a lot of times when these happen, they're being made by not good people. The bad guys are saying it. They're bad people. Bad people do and say bad things. I'll say that. But there is an N-word slur that gets used quite a bit in one little sequence, but it is from the bad people.
True. I noticed when I was watching that there's a brief glimpse of what looks like a plastic bag. And I immediately thought, wait, were there plastic bags in 1956? Because
oh wow, yeah.
Plastic was I did a quick research. Polyethylene bags were invented in 1959.
Oh,
so there was another material called plyofilm that was invented in the early 30s, and I'm pretty sure that was a plastic bag that we see very briefly when the character goes back into the kitchen. I think he's making a sandwich. I can't remember, getting a sandwich or something. And it has to be, not the plastic bag we know today, but it
Right.
has to be an earlier version of
I didn't even think of that.
semi-transparent or mostly transparent. But I thought, hey, wait a second.
Yeah, like,
You don't think about that, but part of the whole point of the Auton invasion in Doctor Who is plastic was everywhere. Plastic was being used in all kinds of things, and it was relatively new for things that used to be made of wood and metal to suddenly be made of plastic. So yeah, I think that was only early 70s. So
Doctor Who was also ahead of the game on bubble wrap years later too, right? Yeah.
true that.
But yeah, I didn't even think of that. I just took it for granted. It was like, yep, there's a bag. I know he wrapped up, like he cut the sandwiches and he wrapped them up in something, but I think that was like a little smaller paper bag, wasn't it? Or
Yeah, I think you see it when I think he takes a loaf of bread out of it or something like that at the beginning when he goes back there.
Gotcha.
Not a plot point at all, but
right. Well, I know like
those little things you notice.
Yeah, when research the liquor bottles all came from like their parents' houses and stuff to like fill out the bar back there. They're trying to do and yeah, that basically. But yeah, it's one of those things that like there's not much to it, but there's a whole lot to enjoy when you're watching it. Just the feeling you get like in a zone, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's gonna have my like. And I love the play of the guy never shows up, so you don't give him what you're expecting, but you do get to see him. But you're not sitting here just waiting for this. You're expecting some shootout to go down, and I like the fact that I'm thinking now. I'm like, yeah, they made like a quick student film. They weren't going to actually fire a gun off or anything, but I was in the moment, so I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
which is the power of the script and the execution for this thing.
I like also how the two henchmen are basically dressed identically.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like that is basically saying these guys are interchangeable. They're just bad, and it doesn't matter. It's not, one's not comedy relief or anything like that. They're both bad. They're both equally bad, and
yeah, they're interchangeable. Their boss don't care who, like you're Goon 1 and Goon 2.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And if you want to switch numbers, that's fine with me. It doesn't matter. So yeah. But no, it's a nice fun one to cut teeth. And usually, you go in these early films, like I've watched some Scorsese early films, but sometimes they can not be as entertaining, or they're just for a fascination and stuff. And this just works. Like I would easily recommend it as like, check out all the Tarkovsky. That's what you have to do here. But you have any like last thoughts for The Killers?
Not really. It's very impressive, like you said.
We're not going to talk like an hour and a half on a 20-minute movie.
It is interesting to compare it to the other student films. And one of the base comparisons is it's black and white, and you can't really call it a noir film. There's no female character to lead anybody astray, right?
Right.
So, but it certainly, the cinematography certainly makes it feel, totally noir. So it might be missing some of those essential ingredients of noir films, but I'd still call it a noir film.
Yeah. It had been. I mean, if we're in 1956, that's the influence right there. That'd been kind of possibly, if they were, who knows what United States films were getting sent up there, or any from Germany or anything like that. So if they were blocking out art that was not Soviet, then who knows? But we will. So we'll move on to something much more Russian and patriotic for them. There Will Be No Leave Today from 1959.
Это что такое? Чем это его?
Автобусом.
А сколько времени прошло?
Около 2 часов. Машин не было, Иван Николаевич.
На стол.
Как на стол? Сделайте ему операцию в Ахтырской больнице.
Он же не доедет. Его и так привезли слишком поздно.
Товарищ Кузьмин, здесь пройдет трасса, по которой повезут снаряды. И вообще...
Что же вы стоите? Я же вам сказал.
Иван Николаевич...
Тише, прошу вас. Нас четверо, и мы остаемся.
Which Tarkovsky and Gordon combine. They come back to direct again together. They write together, along with Irina Markovaya. And this one stars Oleg Borisov, Alexei Alexeev, Pyotr Lyubishkin, Oleg Makshantensky. If you're a relative of any of these people and I am murdering their names, feel free to write me. Vladimir Marenkov and Nina Golovina. And this one's about soldiers who undertake the perilous task of removing a stockpile of World War II bombshells discovered during roadworks under the ground of a small village. While based on a true story, I think it's quite clear Wages of Fear was an influence on this one. I was thinking about it the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one has a bigger budget with some military funding to it, has known actors from there. It also was televised and run for 3 years straight on television. Your thoughts on it, Stephen?
Well, the first thing I need to say is that I didn't know this movie existed until you listed it in your email to me. So I didn't know anything about it. And, in reading up a little bit, I guess it was sort of considered lost for a while until somebody found a print of it. And it's been shown at some film festivals and it's up on YouTube. So this was my first time seeing it. That's
okay.
That's the first thing. And also in black and white. You have to sort of watch with an open mind because the subtitles are not very well translated. And there is a couple of occasions where I felt they had to be flat out wrong, but that's the difficulty with watching unofficially subtitled movies sometimes, right? You got to it's the best you're going to get. So you got to go with it. I actually took more notes on this one than the other ones. So I liked that I felt an immediate connection to the steamroller and the violin because they're doing road work. And the steamroller operator in the third film I'm not quite sure they're working on a road. I can't really tell if they're working on a parking lot or a playground they're definitely doing some asphalt work, but it seems like it's confined to one space. It doesn't look like an open road, right?
Right.
But it's essentially the same thing. It's somebody doing blue collar work out in the open. And so you get that feeling, and it's a steam shovel or what we would call a digger or a caterpillar now, right? And so there's that connection, and I don't know if I don't know if he's making any comment about the common man and being a road worker or anything like that, but you certainly could entertain the possibility that there's something there. So I made kind of a long list of things that it reminded me of, or flashes of thoughts about similar stories or movies, Wages of Fear and Sorcerer, because there was especially shots when you see the unexploded bombs in the back of the truck, surrounded by sand. That was I can't remember how often you see that in. I'm a little bit more familiar with Sorcerer than I am.
Same. Sorcerer is one of my favorite movies ever made. So I put Wages of Fear because that would have been out. That would have been the film they knew. Yeah.
Yeah. And there must be a shot like that. With the cargo being protected and shifting around slightly as the truck drives. But a lot of unexploded bomb type movies. I was a big fan of the television series Danger UXB, which I've watched all the way through like 3 or 4 times. And that obviously it's a mini series, so I think it's 12 or 13 episodes. It's been a while. So there are a lot of opportunities for bomb disposal. But that was sort of closer to, I think, even that it's set during wartime, so bombs are still actively falling in Danger UXB. In this, the bombs are dug up, or at least uncovered. They are not actually dug up. They're uncovered when they're doing road work. And thankfully they don't come down on those things with the digger. They just uncover them, and then
everybody stop. Stop.
Yes. So there are scenes quite like that in Danger UXB. First, if there's a bomb that they see, they get the sappers in to dig all around it, and then bring in the sandbags, all surrounded with sandbags, and then the officer comes in to defuse.
Yeah.
7 Days to Noon is a movie that I like a lot. It's a Bolting Brothers movie. You'll recall that my favorite movie of all time is Brighton Rock.
Brighton Rock, yes.
It's a Bolting Brothers movie. 7 Days to Noon is it's a British film about a scientist who steals basically a suitcase nuke. It's a suitcase atomic bomb.
Okay.
And threatens to detonate it in the heart of London if his demands are not met. And they're peaceable demands, so they're noble, demands, but they still go through the action of evacuating the city of London. And this movie, as soon as they know that there's danger there, and there are quite a few unexploded bombs, and so if one goes off, they're all going to go off. They take the time to evacuate the city, and you kind of don't get a great feel for how populous the city is. It's small, but it's not tiny. It's not a little neighborhood. So evacuation is a big undertaking for that kind of thing.
And we just see it's like, got a guy here, and then like aside from the hospital scene, which is a clever addition to the script from Tarkovsky, everybody just is like gone, kind of. It's not there's no big scramble or what are we gonna take? Don't take anything.
No looting.
Yeah,
everybody's very, very orderly and following the instructions. Yeah. But so it reminded me a lot of 7 Days to Noon, and then The Small Back Room, which is a Powell and Pressburger film. David Farrar plays a bomb disposal guy who's maybe not cut out for it anymore. Great movie. Again, there's actually no scene of defusing a bomb in the Tarkovsky movie. At least I don't remember one. They just cart the bombs away and set them off, if I remember right. And I gotta say that explosion that we see, I wouldn't have bothered evacuating.
Well, there was like one that there was a little teeny explosion. I was like, oh, that's they they did that. But then they had the big grand one where it was almost like it was doing an instant replay on it, because there was a bigger one, but there was the one where where they had the fake out death.
Wow,
the guy,
the guy is,
and that was like
one.
Psh, I was like,
yeah,
oh,
that could happen
he
on
could
the
have
other
stood
side of my room, and it would.
Yeah, he could have stood next to that and been okay. But there was one towards the end where it was like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. But they acted like a crater was going to be formed in the ground after this thing, and it's like, it's like, well, that's the best stock footage we can find.
That's the drawback when it's still a student film.
Yeah,
you're not going to have gigantic bombs going off. And then Quatermass and the Pit.
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, at least it starts with some similarity. They're digging to build a new underground railroad station in London, and they come across something underground and they think that it's an unexploded bomb. So then they bring in the unexploded bomb crew, and they discover it's not an unexploded bomb. And it goes from there. And if you haven't seen Quatermass in the Pit, you need to see Quatermass in the Pit.
It's one of the oldest long-standing, science fiction like things that have been adapted for long ago, because it was a series movie. It's kind of had the Who experience, but on a less longevity level of staying in the public conscious. But
True. Well worth seeing though, especially the original television version. So those are the things that it reminded me of. I made a note about the subtitles being less than
they'll get you through it, but yeah,
right. So I said also that that there are a couple of examples here where some of the characters refuse to follow orders, and I'm not really very well versed in the political side of Tarkovsky's career, to be honest. I could do with some more reading on that, but I have to say, I have to feel like anytime that there's anything even remotely political in his movies, then he's making a definite statement with what he's saying. And I'm not really sure what if this movie had very much importance with he has one of the examples is when the victim is brought into the hospital, and they're told not to do essentially don't do anything, and screw you guys, we're going to work on this guy.
Yeah. It's good stuff. It's good
to save a life.
Adds the drama, makes it like, oh crap, we have to be extra careful now getting out of here.
Right. Yeah. And then so we just talked a moment ago about the wimpy bomb that gets set off. There's a character who's carrying one of the bombs, and he goes behind some like a mountain, a hilltop or something, out of shot basically, but still in camera frame where you don't see him anymore. And then there's moments later, boom. And then we're meant to think that, oh, the guy just got blown up real good. And no, he comes around moments later, and he's okay.
I think his clothes are a little frazzled on one side.
Right. Yeah. Sure. But my thought on that was there is right around that time, I think he's still carrying it, when we get a cut to a train with a train whistle. And I wondered if that wasn't like a Val Lewton kind of meant to startle you and think, because it's fairly abrupt, and at least watching it on the version that's on YouTube, it almost sounds like the train whistle hits before the picture changes, before the actual picture cuts over to the train. So it's almost like you're watching this guy carry this bomb, and you're wondering if it's going to just explode in his hands, and then all of a sudden,
cheap jump scare.
Jump scare kind of thing. I wondered about that. I couldn't tell if it was intentional, but it was kind of prominent enough to make me think that it was. I thought one of the actors looked a lot like a young Ralph Fiennes.
I can see that. I know what you're talking about.
And at times a little bit like a young Christopher Eccleston too, but I guess they look a little bit similar when they were young anyway. And that's about all that I have. This is my first time seeing this movie. So it's good.
My first two. I didn't find out that this was like considered propaganda till after, and I'm like, I guess so. And the way they ran it on TV to throw it on, like, it was on some sort of military. It was on a notable like celebration of the military. I think it was called Victory Day or something like that, where they celebrate the stopping the Germans from invading World War II. But I just take it as like a military thriller. I didn't really take it as like propaganda. Yeah, military saving the day, but who else are they calling in to do that? I just took it as some good drama. So I was like, I'm just continually impressed. I'm like, this is a student film. Like this is
Yeah.
they've got like this is like I mean the acting bumped up from the last one, the scale. You have trucks. They're taking the bomb, explosions, townspeople, a female in the cast. Like
Yeah, right.
they met a girl. They brought her out. They were like, "Oh man, you'd be in my film." And it has like touches where like when she speaking of the female when she returns at the end, it's like the grandiose feeling of like some epic like history movie where it's like I see it. I'm like, I don't feel anything, but I can tell the movie like wants you to
Wants you
feel it
to.
hard, but it's
Yeah.
not working on me. Um, I one of the cool details I liked was when the bombs were buried in the ground and the way they were getting them out was akin to uh a fossil with a dinosaur. They're like brushing it out really. I was like,
Mhm.
that's really nifty. I would have watched that for longer than they gave it to us. I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
this could have been suspenseful itself. But like being careful with the bombs and the truck and everything, I'm like, all right, this is some Wages of Fear sorcerer stuff. I'm down with this. Like this is very cool. Granted, it's a lot shorter trip, and it resolves
Right.
soon after the drive. And they drop the guy off, and like the guy runs to throw it. I'm like, I don't think your vehicle's far enough away to avoid this massive explosion, but okay. But it's competently done. I like the hospital added crises with it. Like I think as a feature film and a more master craftsman, he probably could have added like some more to do with the hospital stuff to ramp the drama up. Um, Elongated the trip with the missile or the bombs and like sorcerer where they come across where the huge tree has fallen over and they have to figure out how to get through that. It has one of the best explosions in cinema history when that thing blows up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like yeah, sorcerer, by the way, which my listeners probably get tired of me bringing it up all the time, but I'm always amazed that no one died making sorcerer because it's like the most dangerous looking movie on film. And I always say this, and I'm going to say it again in case anyone from the IMAX people are watching. I would like that film reformatted for 70 millimeter IMAX and shown. That's like my dream to see in the theater, but I want it big IMAX because it would look amazing.
I'll be there.
Yes, that's my sorcerer. Yeah. Do you guys have the 70 millimeter in Chicago, or is that just us in Indy here?
Yeah, we do.
Do you have the 70 millimeter? Because I know there's only so many, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was, yeah. Oh, so
The other thing to say about this movie is that it's actually pretty fast paced for
yeah,
Tarkovsky. And it's what is it? What did I write it down?
the 45 around that.
Yeah, 45. Yeah, I didn't write down the time for some reason. That's about right.
Yeah, it's more. This is very commercial compared to a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
it's in it, especially compared to the next film we'll talk about. Yeah, this is very
Yeah,
commercial.
it doesn't really feel like what you'd call an art film, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah. Not for sure. Yeah. We're going to get artsy fartsy with the rest of this whole thing, but
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, I definitely yeah, this is very commercialized. Like doesn't feel like him, but he sure has a good handle on something like this. Like I'm pretty impressed with that. And you're talking about his political leanings. I'm not sure, but I do. Doesn't he? Incorrect me if I'm wrong, but like for nostalgia and sacrifice, he leaves the country to go make those, right?
Oh yeah,
He has some disagreements there, and
Yep.
it takes the show on the road. So that's the thing that could possibly come up and when it happens. But yeah, any last words on his second student film?
As we were talking, I also remembered that I almost wrote down that it reminded me some of Kameradschaft, Comradeship, the Pabst film from the early 30s, where there's a explosion in a mine or a collapse in a mine right on the border of Germany and France, and the two countries, the people from the two countries work together, even though there's a fence there and they're not allowed to. They work together to rescue the people. And the reason I didn't write it down was because there wasn't enough of a similarity, but it felt like that a
It
little bit.
evoked it
at
though.
times.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like your compare that. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm definitely because you're giving me like like I've never seen 7 Days to Noon or Danger UXB, and now I'm like, oh, I gotta check those out sometime. So very cool. So we'll move on to his graduation film, The Steamroller in the Violin from 1961. Which
А вы Чапаева смотрели?
Смотрел, а что?
Да, так, ничего. Вон у нас кино напротив.
Может, сходим?
Сходим.
Ну ладно. Ты вот что, приходи часов в 7 к воротам. Смотри, только не опоздай. Ладно?
Ладно. Ровно в 7.
Ровно в 7.
he directs solo, written by Andrei Tarkovsky and Andrei Konchalovsky from a story by S. Bakhametova. Konchalovsky's still writing and directing to this day. So that's pretty. I was like, looking at, I was like, oh wow, still having himself a go at it. Starring.
Did he do Runaway Train, or am I thinking of somebody else?
I'm not sure.
You don't need to do fact checking necessarily on, but
well, I'm doing it for that listener that's like yelling.
Yeah, right. I thought, and I don't know why it just triggered that in my head. You'll find that happens to me a lot. I get triggered, something triggers off a memory and an association, something to do with a movie. It's usually how I remember what year movies were made too, is like some kind of an association in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing the title of the movie spelled out.
He did do Runaway Train, 1985. Okay. Yeah, the Canon Films. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Yep. There you go. Very cool. Yeah, we have royalty in the house here for this short. So stars Igor Fomchenko, Vladimir Zamansky, and Natalia Arkangeleskia. 7-year-old Sasha practices violin every day to satisfy the ambition of his parents. Already withdrawn as a result of his routines, Sasha quickly regains confidence when he accidentally meets and befriends worker Sergei, who works on a steamroller in their upscale Moscow neighborhood. This movie, Tarkovsky had to stand before a board and defend the film in order to pass. They weren't happy with this. They didn't like it. They understand it. They didn't approve of the message of this film, which he's like, there is no fucking message. Like, what and he successfully did, despite their criticisms and stuff. That's like crazy to me.
It is. Yeah.
But this did get a release too, which that's cool as hell. The student film getting released or whatever. But this very much visually feels Tarkovsky to me from the first three. Like I'm just like, whoa, there's the color, there's the big feeling. So
the close-ups feel like Tarkovsky. It's everything is kind of gelling here.
Those other directors were holding them back on the other films. Gets on his own. So let's start with you on Steamroller and the Violin.
Well, so this one, as you said, is color. We're into color now. The colors, I don't know if maybe the film stock wasn't the best, but the color reproduction isn't the greatest. But it just feels like 60s, which it is. So
yes.
I actually have the least amount of notes written for this one, and this was my second time seeing it. I hadn't seen it since 2002.
Okay.
But I first saw it, actually my note is I first saw it when it came out on DVD from Facets.
And that's
which
still the only release.
yeah, yeah, it's on the Criterion
Oh yeah, that's right.
Andrei Rublev disc, but yeah, it's the only. It's not
Solo. Sorry, yes,
It's not a solo release
solo release.
anywhere else. And Facets is the label for the cinema that I went to see Stalker.
Oh, okay.
Facets on Fullerton in Chicago. So that disc came out on June 11th, 2002, which is exactly the same day that I got it, which is the same day that I saw it for the first time.
Day one. See, out
Yeah,
there. Yep.
yeah. And so the first thing that is really noticeable about this one, when you get to the end, is that it's by far the most ambiguous of the three student films, particular in the ending. It's definitely okay, you decide what this movie's ending is about, if it's about anything at all.
Right, yeah.
Which kind of makes me wonder if Tarkovsky successfully defended it to a board. Maybe that was his way of doing it, is, just finding an explanation that satisfied them and not really caring if it was the truth or not,
You gotta wonder if he's like
anything.
Yeah, if he's like, this is exactly what I wanted. You pulled something from it that I wasn't thinking, that I wanted you to,
Exactly. Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, yeah, like I could see him almost standing up there going, well, what do you think it was about?
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
There you go. Well, yeah, there you go. So,
there's a kid playing hacky sack. And boy, if kids think that they were the first ones to invent anything, just watch some old movies. You'll
right.
quickly find out you're wrong. And the thing is, he's constantly kicking it with the side of his foot and counting. So he's, 21, 22, 23, 24, all the way up to 80 or 90 or something like that. Not doing anything different. He's not doing any arty moves. He's just kicking it. Low rent hacky sack. There's a little bit of, I actually forgot most of this movie, having seen it, 23 years ago for the first time. I'd forgotten most of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was watching it again this time, I started to wonder if a big theme in this movie wasn't going to be about bullying,
right?
Because it kind of starts that way. The kid with the violin hides, and tries to get out of his apartment building without the other kids, who are very obviously waiting to ambush him and bully him, without them seeing, and he tries to get past them, and it's the steamroller guy who basically breaks up the mob kind of converging on Sasha, right? And did I get that right? Sasha.
Yep, Sasha. Yep.
Yeah. And
we would have also accepted the boy.
the violin kid. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see that it didn't really go much further. There's a little bit more, and I feel like there could have been like a deeper exploration of bullying, but I feel like it's, at the same time, it's sort of there on this, just under the surface of most of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But bullying is, trying to think of the right way to say this, because it's important to me. It's an important topic.
Yeah.
To me. And that's kind of the only real reason why I wanted more, thinking in that direction, and didn't really get it. So, there's that. They after, at the end of the day, the first day, the boy talks about, he asks the steamroller guy if he's seen a movie called Chapayev.
Mm-hmm.
And they essentially make a date to go see it that night. His mother is not too thrilled about the idea. We don't know anything about this guy. Okay, true, and maybe danger, danger. In
Right.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
age. But there's none of that in this movie, obviously.
Nope.
But it made me wonder about Chapayev. It's a film from the 30s and seemed to be like a folk hero, kind of like a normal person who became a bit of a hero in Russia. So looked like it was on YouTube. I'm gonna follow up and watch that.
Oh, there you go.
See if I can glean anything from that. See if it has any,
We'll have the follow up
importance.
in one of these episodes. What do you do?
Yeah. It's because maybe there's nothing there, but maybe there's something there that adds some relevance to Steamroller and the
Or
Violin.
maybe it was literally playing at the theater down the street from where they were shooting, and it was like, you know what?
Yes. Could be. Because they had, yeah, I mean, they had the posters. They certainly dressed
Mhm.
up a theater for it if there wasn't already one. Um, anyway, the only other note I have is there's water everywhere on the pavement,
Yeah.
and I just wondered if that was of any significance. I don't know if it just happened to be very rainy before they filmed, or if there was
Well,
some.
they always make it to glisten too. It's glistening water,
Mhm.
like the puddle too. So it's not just like, oh, it's wet, but there's a glistening. There's something with mirrors here too when they show the boy and he's like all scattered
Yeah,
across, and there's
yeah.
a reflection in the puddles or the waters too. So yeah, I was picking up on something with that too.
There's one of the shots in the early kaleidoscope shot that you just
Yes.
mentioned,
Yeah.
what was apples landing on the ground, and then somebody comes along and picks up the apples, and then we get more apples on the ground in I think in Ivan's childhood.
Mhm.
My name's Ivan, and there might even be apples on the ground in some of his other movies too. So that's probably one of those persistent images from Tarkovsky's imagination that he keeps returning to. I feel like there's some of that. There's some images that he revisits in several of his movies.
Yeah, he's
It might
definitely
be.
introducing stuff I recognize from down the road here. Yeah, for sure.
I am a little bit disappointed in this movie because because I couldn't really come up with any um concrete thoughts about the ending. I couldn't, I thought about it, but I just kind of don't really see. I would have been sitting up there on the board saying, "Whoa, Andre, what's this movie about?" Or, I don't know if it's just a failure of not being a Russian, excuse me, citizen at the time, or if there really is something there that I missed, don't understand, don't recognize, or if there just isn't something there.
Yeah. It like, is it a dream? Is it in his mind? Like it's it's like, maybe it's just time's up and he's done filming, like, and he has to, or he's got to figure it in the editing room, and that's what they had to cut to
Mhm.
for something, or yeah,
The film ends with the steamroller
steamroller
just rolling away
in the daytime
in
too.
the
So
daytime
yeah,
through a puddle.
through a puddle. Yeah, maybe that's squashing whatever, or coming together. Maybe it's running it over. They're mixing. They're coming together. The concrete isn't always solid. Yeah, it's yeah. It's like, well, what are we saying here? Yeah, the joy of Tarkovsky. What do you say? But yeah, I for one, like, I hadn't seen this in a lengthy time, and I was like, watch. I was like, what? I generally remember this about. I was like, wait, is this gonna turn into some sort of like kid bicycle thieves with the violin, and him and the guy have to go, like, the kids are gonna steal it or something, and uh, yeah, but no, there is bullying here, but it wasn't that. There's also something about him, the kid maybe learning to, like, because his violin teacher seems tough on him, and then he meets another adult, and his mother's tough on him. You can't go to. So there's something with him learning these authority figures or something that's there. And the kid and the steamroller guy are definitely Sasha and the steamroller driver are definitely yin and yangy to a thing to where they're learning about each other. Um, it is interesting that there's the scene where he just lets him get beat up, kind of. He leaves him by the kid, and I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, what's gonna happen? I was like, oh wow, he just let him get like, he's like, okay, I'll wait 3, 4, but I really like how it's filmed where they go, you don't see the violence, you follow it in the house, and you're in the little house or whatever they're at, and you watching across the street for him to in real time come across and go in, and that's really cool. That's some of the patience and things that really pay off with Tarkovsky movie. They breathe. The reality breathes, but it doesn't feel like you're just, some old directors in the 70s, you get it a lot where they're TV directors where they just kind of like set a camera, you're in frame, and just act the whole scene out. And it's not like that. It's much more going on.
The scene where the steamroller guy watches Sasha get a little bit of abuse follows Sasha watching another kid. This older kid bopping him on the head with a rubber ball. That's really low low on the painful attack scale, but Sasha comes and rescues the kid. So I feel like maybe that there is at least I'm not sure that he would have done that if he hadn't been spending time with Steamroller Guy who saved him earlier.
Yeah, the false sense of confidence that, he could do that. So it was like a transference of saving from the one kid. But yeah, well, he said something like, why are you picking on people smaller than you as he's also smaller than that kid? It's like, oh, man.
Yeah.
I
well.
I thought that was going to play a lot differently than it wound up. So
right, yeah. And there's the early scene where he's going in. He has to go into school to play the piece for his music teacher, and he has to sit outside and wait for his turn. There's a very sweet scene where there's an older woman sitting there already, and a little girl comes in and takes her seat next to him, and they don't really interact because they're shy and young and not likely to be the type of they're not old enough to strike up a conversation, essentially, right? Or they're just old enough not to.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like if they were younger, they just would have started talking to each other right away. And they kind of have an unspoken conversation almost with film language, He takes out the apple and then leaves it for her. And I liked that scene a lot. That was sweet.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that one. And then there's the wrecking ball scene, which definitely is like how they got that perfectly for there breaks, and then you can see the building in the background and stuff like that. It's a famous building, right? That one.
The one that I don't know either.
It is the Seven Sisters, or the wrecking ball. Yeah. Something like that. I remember that scene. It was just like there's a building in the back. I was like, oh, okay. So I don't know if it's saying old with the old, in with who knows, or there's beauty behind. I don't know.
Well, that and the road work that's taking place in the previous movie, probably are just showing progress of reconstructing. It's still it's a long way, but it's been quite a few years, but it's still post-war.
True, yeah, post-war government changeover, complete makeover of their political ideologies and
civic improvements. And,
yeah,
that. So
Definitely. Yeah,
it's
that's
cool to get a glimpse of that, you know.
yeah. Yeah, through 2 films actually going back to back with this and see if we'll maybe get hints of more of that um throughout. But yeah, that's definitely interesting to see as it's captured on film because you see these like buildings get destroyed and I'm like, "Oh crap, that's like you can't go back home." Tore down a building with like, wonderful things that were around or you never knew what it looked like before or as it was because then you get like war torn cities and things like that that have to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
reconstructed, which is a whole other thing. um yeah, this one pretty much just, I think, while colorful and symbolic, I think it's just primarily just wanting to showcase these team up of this older person that's been through, because he's a former soldier, been through stuff, and this kid whose toughest battle is his violin lessons and the route to get to and from home without being picked on by people. And his little thing is this little violin, and the guy drives a big steamroller. So it's definitely some interesting comparisons there. But this feels like he's unleashed with this one in terms of visuals and his more just metaphysical nature to his storytelling is opened up here. Like, here I am, this is what we're going to be, and that's what we have. So
Yeah, and we already touched on some moments of just pure imagery,
yeah.
not really adding anything to the story, but just showing us things, which he does continually.
Yes. Yeah, very excited to get through to the other ones. Especially just these. Just I've never I do it just to watch them, but to do a recording of them into conversations, I'm very happy to get these locked down, and you and I creating our history of what we think and what we're talking about Tarkovsky. So, okay, well that'll do it for part 1 of Tarkovsky's Tales. Next month, we'll be looking at his first feature film, Ivan's Childhood, from 1962. So get your criterions ready for that. Until then, Stephen, where can people keep up with you and find you around the socials and stuff?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Stephen Warren Hill. I use my full name because when I became a published author, I thought it would be smart to do that. So, publicly, I use my full name. And I'm on Blue Sky too, but I haven't really used it yet. Waiting for the day when I really have to.
Yeah.
Enough said. So yeah. And I'm always on Gallifrey Base, the Doctor Who forum. So you can find me there too.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. I'm on the socials at Brandon4KOHD. You can also find the show on YouTube. PopCon's coming back and bigger and better than ever this June. Just announced today, the PopCon Creator Summit will be taking place on June 25th and 26th, right before the show. For info and tickets to that, see popconsummit.com. Very excited about that. It's going to be filmmakers, authors, YouTubers, podcaster event, which leads into the regular convention, which will be held on June 27th through 29th. Information on that at popcon.us. I, of course, will be hosting and running both the live podcast stage and the podcast awards. So go to popcon.us. Be sure to sign up for both. And all right, that's lots of fun down the road here. But this show will return next week. And until then, stay film positive.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at brandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at brandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.